Welcome to this explainer on Selma Lagerlöf's classic tale, The Rat Trap. Today we're going to unpack exactly how a bitterly cold, harsh Swedish winter sets the absolute perfect stage for a profoundly moving lesson on human nature, and ultimately, redemption. But to really kick things off, let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt totally lured in by something shiny and new? Maybe a shortcut to success or some material possession you just had to have, only to realize a little too late that you've been caught in a trap? Keep that exact feeling in mind, because that is exactly what we are exploring today. All right, let's jump right into part one. The world is a rat trap. We've got to start by meeting our protagonist. We're introduced to a poor, ragged vagabond who is just surviving on the absolute margins of society. He gets by through begging, a bit of petty thievery, and making these small wire rat traps out of scrap materials he finds lying around. And as he plods along his miserable, hungry existence, he actually finds a dark sort of amusement in one really cynical philosophical thought, that the whole world was nothing but a big rat trap. For some reason, this thought brings him a twisted kind of joy during his incredibly dreary days. He breaks down this trap's mechanism perfectly. He truly believes that everything good in life, the riches, the joys, the shelter, the food, it all functions exactly like the cheese and pork in a literal rat trap. It's all just bait. And the moment anyone lets themselves be tempted enough to touch that bait, the trap snaps shut on them, and everything comes to an end. Which brings us nicely to section 2, taking the bait. So our peddler's incredibly bleak philosophy is very quickly put to the test. One dark, freezing evening, he knocks on the door of a lonely old crofter's cottage, really just hoping to find some shelter for the night. Now, he totally expects the usual sour faces and immediate rejection, but instead, the crofter actually welcomes him in warmly. The lonely old man happily shares his hot porridge, carves off a generous slice of tobacco for him, and even breaks out an old pack of cards to play a game with his guest. This old crofter is incredibly friendly. In fact, maybe a little too trusting, right? He tells the peddler all about his glory days working at the Ramjo Ironworks and explains that his cow is what supports him now. And just to prove it, he proudly takes down a letter pouch hanging right by the window and shows the peddler his prized earnings, 3 wrinkled 10-kroner bills. So what does the peddler do in the face of this vulnerability? Well, he takes the bait. The very next morning, the peddler leaves the cottage at the exact same time as the crofter, but literally 30 minutes later, he comes right back. He smashes the window pane, sticks his hand in, steals the 30 kroner, and then hangs the empty pouch right back up where he found it. Moving right along to section 3, Lost in the Woods. Now feeling pretty pleased with his own cunning, the peddler knows he absolutely can't stay out on the public highway, so he darts into the forest to hide with his stolen loot, feeling confident he's gotten away with it. But man, his situation goes downhill fast. At first, in hour 1, it's a breeze, but by hour 3, the paths start twisting back and forth confusingly. By hour 5, the terrifying realization hits him. He has just been walking in endless circles. As darkness falls around hour 6, the forest feels like an impenetrable prison, and he collapses in total despair. He realizes he has finally been caught in the world's rat trap. But then, just when all hope is completely lost at hour 7, he hears it, a hard, regular thumping. Hammer strokes from a nearby iron mill. And that sets up section 4, a case of mistaken identity. Exhausted, freezing, and honestly fearing for his life, he staggers toward that sound and finally finds refuge inside the warm, glowing forge of the Ramshow Ironworks. Enter the wealthy owner of the mill, the ironmaster, who happens to be doing a night inspection. And here is where the dramatic irony of the story peaks. The ironmaster looks at this tall, filthy ragamuffin in the dim, flickering light of the furnace and shockingly mistakes the ragged peddler for an old army buddy, exclaiming, "But of course it is you, Nils Olaf." The ironmaster immediately insists this man must come home with him to the manor house for Christmas. But the peddler, he is terrified. He's got 30 stolen kroner burning a literal hole in his pocket. He refuses flat out, feeling like stepping into that fancy manor house would be exactly like throwing himself voluntarily into a lion's den. Since the peddler absolutely won't budge, the ironmaster sends his daughter, Edla Wilmanson. Now, Edla isn't forceful at all. She's modest, shy, but deeply, deeply compassionate. She immediately notices that the peddler is terrified and deduces he's either stolen something or escaped from jail. But instead of judging him, she speaks to him so gently, promising him that he will be completely free to leave whenever he wishes. And it's this genuine warmth that finally convinces him to accept the invitation. Which brings us to Section 5, the Christmas confrontation. So the next morning, the peddler gets the full treatment. A bath, a haircut, a shave, and he's even dressed in a fine suit of clothes belonging to the Ironmaster. But when he enters the dining room in broad daylight, the truth is instantly revealed. The Ironmaster clearly sees his mistake. He feels totally cheated, gets absolutely furious, and threatens to call the sheriff right then and there. But Edla passionately intervenes. She feels this immense compassion for a poor vagabond who is usually chased away from everywhere he goes, and she insists on honoring their promise to give him just one single day of peace for Christmas. But before Edla can even fully diffuse the situation, the peddler fiercely defends himself. He throws his dark philosophy right back at the wealthy Ironmaster, warning him that the whole world is a trap, and one day even he might get caught reaching for his own big piece of pork. It is this incredibly powerful, tense moment of philosophical defiance. And that leads us to our final act, Section 6, Redemption and the Letter. Thankfully, the Ironmaster actually backs down, and Edla's remarkable kindness wins out. She lets him stay, feeds him the huge Christmas feast, and even tells him the expensive suit is a gift to keep. For the first time in years, the peddler sleeps soundly. He experiences real, unconditional safety. But the suspense kicks right back into high gear the next morning. While the peddler is still sleeping, the Ironmaster and Edla head to the early Christmas church service, and it's there they get a shocking revelation. They learn that one of the old crofters of the ironworks was just robbed by a man wandering around selling rat traps. Terrified that their own home has now been completely cleared out of its silver, they rush back as fast as they can. But they are completely shocked by what they actually find. The valet tells them the peddler left without taking a single thing. In fact, he left behind a very specific package just for Edla. Inside, a small wire rat trap, those 3 wrinkled 10-kroner notes he had stolen, and a jaggedly written letter signed Captain von Stahle. In this beautifully crafted letter, he writes that the rat trap is a Christmas present from a rat who absolutely would have been caught in this world's rat trap if he had not been raised to the status of captain. He explains that because Edla treated him with the true dignity and respect of a real captain, she elevated him. Her pure kindness gave him the strength and the power to clear his own conscience, and he specifically asks her to return the stolen money to the old crofter. And this just brilliantly illustrates the core theme of Lagerlöf's work here, the transformative power of compassion. The story shows us that even in the harshest conditions imaginable, and even when a person is entirely lost to their own deep cynicism, true understanding, empathy, and compassion can elevate them. It can actually awaken their inner goodness and break that vicious cycle of suffering and debt. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to really ponder today. What bait are you currently chasing in your own life? And is it really worth the trap? It's a question that definitely echoes long after the story ends. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this fascinating tale, and I hope it gave you some incredible new insights into human nature.